Hi, good morning everyone. Welcome to the DNV webinar on unlocking NIS2. Today we will talk about the challenges and solutions that EU member states and operators of essential services experience and have figured out on how to address them. We will come up with hands-on examples of how operators of essential services have been implemented the cybersecurity measures as described by the NIS2 directive. Also, we hear from our expert Konstantinos, our ENISA expert, on what is ENISA's mission and how they are helping EU member states and operators of essential services in implementing those cybersecurity measures. So I want to welcome everybody to this webinar that we have today. I'll quickly introduce myself. I am your host for today. I'm Gennady Kreukniet, Senior OT Security Consultant at Applied Risk, which is a DNV company. We also see Kirsti Eikeland. She is a Principal Cybersecurity Consultant at DNV with over 12 years of experience in supporting companies in the energy industry and addressing risks and opportunities, with extensive experience with governance aspects of industrial systems applying security management frameworks such as ISO 27001, IEC 6443, and the NIST framework. And also we have Konstantinos Moulinos. He is the expert at the EU Agency for Cybersecurity, ENISA, and he's an expert in network and information systems and network and information security. He's also the manager of ENISA's energy cybersecurity related projects and has more than 12 years experience at ENISA as an expert for critical information and infrastructure protection. Then let's go over to some housekeeping rules. So if you face any technical issues, then please put your hand up and we can help you with that. For attendees, you can ask your questions in the right where you have your control panel, and when you ask your questions, we can pick them up and ask them at the end of the QA. At the end of this webinar, we will have enough time to answer all the questions that you may have. So, the agenda for today. We'll start off with a bit of a review of what the NIS2 is about. What are the objectives, what's the goals, and what is the timeline? Then we'll go over a few examples that we see in the industry that operators of essential services experience whilst they are implementing the cybersecurity measures and to become compliant with NIS2 directive. Furthermore, Kirsti will also discuss the challenges that these operators face and also come with solutions in what are the best ways to dealing with all the cybersecurity measures that are required by the NIS2 directive. Then Konstantinos will talk about ENISA's mission and how he helps member states and operators in how to become more cyber secure. At the end, we will have a Q&A where we are able to answer your questions that you may have related to how operators implement cybersecurity measures, what are their timelines, what are their experiences, what are their challenges, but also how ENISA helps member states, how they help different industries in becoming cyber secure. At the end, we will have a Q&A where you can ask your questions and we will help you with answers. Any questions that will remain, we can also at a later stage answer those questions to help you and to help the industry to become more cyber secure. So, what is the NIS directive about? Why do they have it and why was it implemented? So the goal is to create a high common level of cybersecurity among member states. What they saw with the 27 member states is that they had each their own cybersecurity legislature, or that they were missing it at all. So the NIS directive is there to create a goal to have a high level common cybersecurity amongst the member states. And how do you achieve that? You have that with several objectives. So one, it is to create clarity on and expand the scope of the essential entities which are in scope, so that power companies across the member states, across the EU, will have a similar understanding of who is in scope and what is critical infrastructure. Second, there's also to reduce inconsistencies between member states, because as we are living in a more connected society, you want that all member states have a similar level of cybersecurity or do better. And you want to reduce inconsistencies that may exist between the member states. And the last one is an objective to improve joint situational awareness and collective capability. And we see that from the incident reporting that is done, where operators of essential services, if they have a security incident, they have to report their incidents without due delay. So this helps to get all the information, to have a good overview within the European Union, to know what are the cyber threats that we are experiencing, and also how to protect the member states and the operators of essential services. So we've come a long way. We're now, which started in 2016 when the first NIS directive went into effect. This was the first step in helping and creating that cybersecurity, that common level of cybersecurity within the European Union. Then within 2 years, each member state had to transpose the directive into national laws, which meant that at that time, operators of essential services had to implement the cybersecurity requirements that were stated in NIS1 directive. This had to deal with your incident response activities, you're testing the incident response, reporting any security incident that you have to your competent authority, and also the collaboration between different member states. In 2020, there was an update of the NIS directive to the NIS2 directive. This expanded the scope of which organizations and which industries are required to become NIS compliant. Also, it came with a set of cybersecurity measures that you see in Article 21, where there's a set of 10 items and topics that these operators have to implement. Also, there is more collaborative guidance on how member states work together, and also Konstantinos will discuss more about how this works and how this looks like. At the beginning of this year, the NIS2 directive came into force, and it stated that it gave member states a year and a half to transpose the directive into national laws, and that operators had become compliant with those laws by October 2024. Currently, you see the Christmas tree right there between 23 and 24. That's where we are now. So we are halfway between when the NIS2 directive became public and came into force, and until the new requirements are to be implemented by the operators. And we've seen in the industry that there are many questions on what do we actually need to do, what are the cybersecurity measures that we have to do, and what is actually required by 2024, what do we need to do? So first, I'll come with an example where what we've seen with a large power company situated in Northern Europe is with about 800 energy generating units, where they had the same question. We have multiple assets which are above the threshold of 100 megawatts, which is in the Netherlands the threshold for being in scope, being defined as a critical infrastructure. And they wondered, how can we make sure that all our assets are secure? So what they did was they started with one pilot business unit, and this business unit is the guidance of the rest of the organization. This business unit is really engaged and really enthusiastic about about cybersecurity measures, because they see it as a competitive advantage in the industry. If they can ensure high availability for their customers, then they have a higher value in the industry. Also, this business unit is not only operating the assets owned by their own power company, but also for joint ventures. So they have a lot of different stakeholders to work with. What this business unit is, this offshore wind business unit set up a small pilot in the form of an ISMS, so an ISO 27001 information security management system, and they created an operating model, a governance model for that unit, but with all the different linkages to all the stakeholders that they deal with internally, and especially for their business unit also externally. And that governance model, but also the set of procedures that are created in order to do your risk management, to implement your cybersecurity measures, that was also a guidance, an example for the rest of the organization. And currently, they are using the offshore wind unit to roll out this way of working. So setting up an ISMS and also doing your risk management and your plan, do, check, act on your cybersecurity measures for the rest of the organization and other business units and power generating assets. So that is one way of implementing your cybersecurity measures. Another challenge we saw is that especially that the NIS directive has as a goal to have a common level of cybersecurity. Another example is a pipeline company that I've been working with lately, and they have assets and an organization that are located in the upstream country. However, in this country, it is not defined as an operator of essential services. So the competent authority has stated, well, for us, you are not essential services. However, the competent authority of the downstream member state has defined as critical, because it's an oil pipeline sending product as well as crude into their refinery, and making sure that a large portion of their country has petrol, has jet fuel, and is able to run their country. So the downstream member state has defined as critical. So, and that makes it a very interesting situation where the NIS directive can ensure that there should be a guidance on that common level of cybersecurity, and that scope is well defined. What is interesting also is that there's a small difference with reporting of incidents. Incident reporting has to happen to both member states where you are located. Whereas, for example, with the GDPR, you only do it in one state that you are located in. So that is a small difference with a different regulation, but really working on the same goal of having your cybersecurity improved. And this is now a bridge to Kirsti, who will explain more about what are the challenges that companies face implementing NIS2 requirements.
Okay. Thank you, Gennady, for that insight. Let's address, do you want to switch the slides, please? Let's address some of the challenges that these companies are facing with NIS2. So recently, DNV did a poll amongst professionals in the industrial sector in Europe, and we found that almost 35% of respondents weren't even familiar with NIS2, and that many organizations hadn't started preparing for it. So let's start then with the first question, and that is the NIS2 directive applicable to my business, and how? So in NIS2, we're moving from this top-down nomination by the member states to a more bottom-up approach, or self-nomination, if you will, to trying to standardize this process. And we have clear qualification criteria for these entities specified in the appendixes. And there's also a set of criteria related to the size and criticality of the entities. But as the example from Gennady said, there are some complicating factors. Companies can have multiple country operations, as in that case, but they can also have multiple business areas where at least one of them qualify for NIS2. So how do you address that? And of course, again, some companies, they are appointed by member states due to their criticality and role in society. So, sorry. Another challenge that we see is what we can call the known unknowns. So the 10 general risk management measures, as mentioned in Article 21, they're formulated to protect network and information systems and the physical environment also from incidents. And you know, the objectives of these measures, they're clear, but it does leave companies with a very large degree of freedom in designing and implementing a sufficient level of controls. What is sufficient? How do you find the level that suits your risk exposure? And many companies are really struggling to find the correct height. So defining this level of controls, but also importantly, developing necessary evidence for compliance. And the last and final challenge is about funding and ensuring investments in cybersecurity. And for companies that fall under the directive, EU estimates that the ICT budget will need to increase with about 22% for the first years. And well, I don't know about that number, but we can surely say that their implementation cost will be substantial for some companies, and it might be a very hard sell internally to get funding. But I want to mention that there's 3 factors that support investing in cybersecurity now. And I think any board needs to be conscious of the choices they make regarding NIS2, both in terms of this personal liability that they now have in NIS2 for non-compliance. And actually from October 24, there can be real consequences in the form of penalties and fines. And even though the country you operate in now hasn't implemented an auditing regime, the EU Commission can actually, if it wants, enforce the directive and the non-compliance part. And thirdly, of course, trying to avoid or minimize the cost of a cybersecurity incident. It's a pretty good argument. Next slide, please. So where to start, what to do? In terms of understanding the scope, as mentioned, there are criteria. And in this case, we have looked into some best practice around Europe in the member states. And we have seen that, for instance, the governments in Austria and Netherlands, they have made very nice online self-assessment tools that you can start with. And another important factor here in the beginning is to identify your assets. Not all network and information systems are automatically included in the definition. So you need to understand which of these systems actually support the essential and important services that you deliver. And of course, in terms of cybersecurity posture, you need to make sure risks related to the potential interfaces are identified. Next, measuring the unknowns. So this is, of course, a very complicated thing, but our best approach in determining the way forward is understanding your cybersecurity maturity, or the point of departure. This can best be done by using an existing framework, if you have that, or choosing a best practice framework such as ISO 27000 or IEC 62443, and do a gap assessment on that. And either way, it will give you good guidance on important roles, processes, controls, and mechanisms that need to be in place to ensure a robust cybersecurity practice. And to this end, we actually have found some good practice in Finland. They have created guidance on how to assess your capabilities, and it's available in English. And so we recommend you can have a look at that. And finally, you should start developing your roadmap towards NIS2 compliance. And this should be done by conducting a thorough risk assessment process that enables the prioritization of tasks and measures that fit your goals and your risk exposure. And then you need to build a business case for the board also to plan out activities and ensure timely compliance. And in this area, best practice for reference perhaps is that both Germany and Belgium have built really solid cybersecurity framework requirements within ISO 27000 in Germany and in NIST in Belgium, which are actually definitely worth a look. Or even another option is using ENISA's minimum requirements for operators of essential services from NIS1. It's also a very good starting point looking at all the different areas and controls that might be applicable. Okay, next. So we want to share some experience from another case. This is in vendor security, and of course, addressing the value chain is important. We know that a lot of vulnerabilities in components now are a major threat vector, and the further away from the company they are, these risk outliers, they are often unmanaged. And NIS2 explicitly targets the value chain as one of these risk management measures. And how can an operator get control of its supply chain when you have hundreds of different vendors? And could we make it easier for them, for the operator, but also for the supplier, to set kind of a right level of security? And this was done by standardizing the requirements definition process. So keeping in with the NIS2 about the framework, we chose a framework that helped us to find one common set of rules and requirements for all vendors. And then we worked closely with procurement. Important to start with the first phase of a project, and we identified all the vendors and looked at the legal and contractual aspects and made some addendums that were reusable. And we also had a final point that everything we did needed to have validity for all types of projects, or redevelopment projects, new projects, things like that. So this right level, what is that? So using this set of requirements or rules, a common set, we identified subsets And these subsets, they were defined by the vendor or supplier type, so OEMs, software suppliers, managed service providers, and so on, and also prioritized by impact or potential risk and consequence of a breach. So we looked at are there vendors that serve multiple sites? Which sites are the most critical? For instance, which sites needed to be NIS2 compliance, which sites had the most connections, and so on. And we also looked at their use of remote access, as it's an important sorry, threat vector. And by that, we could actually formulate different subsets that were applicable to a category of vendors. And this process and these requirements, they are easily rolled out to different countries, to different sites. And also more importantly, perhaps, it ensures consistency and transparency for verification and assurance activities throughout the life cycle. So possible, easier to follow up. Okay. Thanks. Next slide, please. So we talked about some challenges and what you can do to comply. And we've seen an example about how to approach the NIS2 compliance. And we know that the original NIS had some shortcomings that became very visible during the implementation. A lot of variations between the nomination of the critical service providers, and the directive was implemented very differently between several member states. And now the NIS2 really has strengthened the approach to harmonize efforts among member states, both on a national level, where they have more clear requirements in terms of auditing responsibilities and so on, but also across country borders. It's these now, many of the borderless services, they should have more similar requirements now, enabling them to be more efficient and robust, and well, lessen the cost of compliance in several countries. So with NIS2, there are clear expectations and means of collaboration, such as the CSIRT network and the EU Cyber Crisis Network, the Cyclone, which I know Mr. Moulinos will talk about later. So still, for entities, of course, interpreting laws and regulations into practice, it's hard to create consistency. It will still be, we assume, differences between countries, but choose a widely known standard and use it as a tool. It will not give you a complete NIS2 compliance, perhaps, but it's a very good start. Yeah, and of course, ENISA, their enhanced role now in the cybersecurity practice across the EU to harmonize and improve the cybersecurity posture is important. And with this, I hand it over to Mr. Moulinos from ENISA. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for the invitation. Can you hear me? Yes. So I will give you an overview of the NIS directive, as well as the role of with a focus on ENISA role. So this is a graphic that we have created at ENISA, and this reflects the NIS1 situation. We have to update it now with the NIS2 next year. But I put this in order to give you a very summarize what the NIS directive is doing. Actually, we have the critical sectors marked with blue, and the digital service providers marked with red color. at the heart of the NIS directive, there are two important requirements for the essential and important entities. There is the reporting of significant incidents to the authorities and the security requirements that they need to take based on a risk-based approach. All these are coordinated, and the decisions are taken, so to speak, with regards to the implementation of the directive by a group which is called a cooperation group, where each member state has one representative. And at the same time, there is another group, there is a team, the CSERT network, the collection of the CSERTs of Europe, which deal with the details and the incident response and incident handling in case of an incident. So, having said that, I will proceed with the next slide, which is more or less, I will provide you some information concerning the NIS Cooperation Group. The NIS Cooperation Group, as I said, is a collection of the representatives, the national competent authorities of all Europe. The Secretariat is run by the European Commission. ENISA is a member of this group. And the cooperation group has split its work in different work streams, where it's chaired by one or two co-chairs from the member states. And the work of the title of each work stream more or less reflects the work that is being done in this work stream. For example, we have a work stream which deals with the security measures or the incident reporting requirements and so on. But not only horizontal work streams, but also we have vertical sectorial ones, like work stream for energy, work stream for health, and so on and so forth. What does ENISA support? Does in order to support the cooperation group? First, we identify good practice in the member states regarding the implementation of the NIS directive, and this way we somehow act as a filter and as a bridge between the different member states. We participate, of course, in the plenaries of the cooperation group, as well as to all of these work streams. And to also we run the secretariat of some work streams, like we run the secretariat of the work stream on security measures. NISA also runs the secretariat of the work stream on incident reporting, and so on and so forth. We run the secretariats of more or less 8 work streams out of the 16 existing ones. We support also. We provide knowledge by drafting or delivering or contributing to the deliverers of the work streams. We draft technical deep dives, and we are also helping the activities of the work stream with technical sessions, like, for example, we deliver trainings on auditing, on cloud, 5G security, and so on and so forth. Finally, ENISA is the collection point, so to speak, of the significant incidents on cyber. The member states have to send once per year, and now with the NIS directive, this will become 3 times per year. The significant incidents at the national level should be submitted to ENISA, as well as the ones with a cross-border dimension, and ENISA issues an annual incident report. The main pillars of the NIS directive: member states' capabilities, risk management, and cooperation information exchange. The first one refers to requirements for the member states. The second, I think, is most important for this presentation. On top of the security measures, which are based on a risk-based approach and the incident and notifications and notification requirements. Now with NIS2, we have the addition of an extra requirements, accountability for top management for non-compliance. I will show you later slide about this and what it does involve. And finally, the cooperation information exchange between among the member states and the private sector as well, which with the red color you see all the tasks that they are new for they are not new. This is for example existing the NIS directive. One, however, there are more tasks and they are relevant to the to the tasks of ENISA. So ENISA runs the Secretariat of the CEP network, also runs the Secretariat of the Cyclone, will be responsible for the development of a pan-European vulnerability registry. And ENISA will be responsible for issuing a biannual cybersecurity report every 2 years with regards to the status of cybersecurity across Europe, and also will develop a registry with the entities which run which are of particular belong to particular sectors like the DNS providers, TLDs, cloud providers, and so on, which have a cross-border, so to speak, or many or multinational nature. Is there a need for an update of Kirsti mentioned about baseline security measures of ENISA? Actually, they are not of ENISA, they are the baseline security measures of the NIS cooperation group. Do we need an update? Yes, of course, we need an update of these measures. Why? Because, first of all, NIS2 directive under Article 21 introduces extra security measures. So we need to update the reference document, the minimum baseline security measures. We will work together with the cooperation group to develop this. And after the development, following the update of this document, Commission will have also the requirement from the NIS directive, ENISA together with the cooperation group to provide input to Commission concerning the implementing acts on security measures. And this work has been concluded already, and we have provided this input to Commission. Now, with regards to this notification, as I mentioned before, you know, ENISA is the central point, the repository of the incidents that member states report to ENISA according to NIS directive. This will be according to NIS2. These reports will take place every 3 months, and here you see a kind of a scheme of how the reporting is taking place. In a nutshell, the operator which faces an incident has to report to the national authority, and these authorities every 3 months will report to the cooperation group and ENISA. In the NIS Directive 2, there are specific timelines, starting with the original, so to speak, the heads up, so to speak, which has to be taken take place in 1 day, within 24 hours. Then the first report to the authorities take place at 72 hours, and then the final report is submitted 1 month after the incident. You see, there is a kind of phased approach concerning the incident notification under NIS2. As I said, the third responsibility for the entities on top of the security measures incident reporting is the management responsibilities. The Article 20 NIS2 introduces the responsibility of the top management with regards to the cybersecurity, the implementation of cybersecurity measures. So you see these five responsibilities, tasks that the top management of the organization is responsible for. And as Kirsti said, there are some fees, some sort of penalties in case of non-compliance. Of course, this is the last resort. We have to focus on the other four tasks that you see here concerning the supervision of the implementation of the measures and the training of the top management as well as of the employees. The last slide concerning what is new in the NIS directive concerning the crisis management I mentioned before. by Gennady and Kirsti. This is, you see the three levels of activities in case of a cross-border incident under NIS directive. In the NIS directive 1, the lower level you see in the slide was created, the CSAT network. And the top level was existing in any case, the communication between the political communication at the national level, the governments communicate with each other. What we were missing was the second level, the operational collaboration, so to speak, in case, for example, of an incident in the energy sector. The CSAT network is not enough because the CSAT network consists of people who are technical and they are very good at IT cybersecurity, but they don't have the right knowledge of the energy sector. So here in Cyclone, a network of a single point of contacts for each member state has been created, which is responsible to coordinate internally the operational aspects and communicate with the national level authorities or operators in case of a cross-border incident. How does ENISA support the member states? You see here activities that we do for the member states. Practically, these activities relate to information sharing, to knowledge exchange, as well as, in some cases, we deliver also the training and we execute cybersecurity exercises in order to increase the capabilities of the member states. Also, on top, we have some tools, we call them, not in the strict area of software or hardware tools. However, I will show you with the next slides, I will give you a glimpse of what we mean by these tools. We have the NIS directive tool. We need to update this for the next year. With this, the visitor of our website can find for each sector which is the national competent authority for this sector. Also, with this tool, we have mapped the security measures of NIS1 with existing standards, and now we have to update it, this mapping with the NIS2 requirements. Another activity that we do is the NIS investments report, which is more or less an assessment of the implementation of the NIS directive. Recently, we published the NIS investments report for 2023. It's a quite extensive survey across Europe which involves all member states. 1,080 OSTs, operators with service of or DSPs across Europe have been surveyed. I invite you to read this report, where you will find very interesting results and findings from our survey. Heading the closing of my presentation by some challenges we have ahead, not only ENISA but also Commission and the member states. A lot of new tasks and several changes exist in the NIS2 directive. There are twice as many sectors when compared to the NIS1, and more companies within each sector. We are talking here about a change from the order of hundreds to the order of thousands for each member state, especially for the big ones. The evolving threat landscape, which is changing in the changing needs, this is a challenge for the especially for the cooperation group to adapt to these challenges. For example, one key challenge we expect for the future is the artificial intelligence, and it will be a challenge how to deal with this at the cooperation group level. And the sectorial, the alignment with the sectorial initiatives and the existence of similar or existing of the existence of other cybersecurity legislative regimes with similar, overlapping, or complementary requirements, not only sectorial, but also horizontal, like the GDPR. This is a challenge on how to align all these different regimes. And this is my final slide. I presented some conclusions. The NIS directive is still the primary leverage for cybersecurity investments, despite the fact that Europe in general is lagging behind other areas of the planet, of the universe, concerning the investment in cybersecurity. The operators of essential services and the digital service providers, the entities which have been assigned this role under the NIS directive, seem to invest more on cybersecurity than operators in other areas of the globe. ENISA plays a significant role, as you saw in the implementation of the NIS directive. We need to increase the investments in cybersecurity in order to assure resilience of infrastructure across the EU, especially for smaller companies. And one big challenge is the coexistence of several cybersecurity regulatory developments at EU level, which require extensive collaboration between the public and the private sector. So this way I conclude my presentation, and I give the floor back to Gennady.
Yes, thank you very much, Konstantinos, and also Kirsti for your great insight on the NIS2 directive, what the role is of ENISA, what are the guidances that you provide, and how you help member states and operators on becoming more cyber secure. We do have multiple questions from the audience, so let me go through a few of them. I'll start with you, Konstantinos. There is a question from there's a question from Hans. We see that there's ENISA has a working group for 5G, but there's not a working group, for example, for AI. Is there going to be, because there's an impact of using AI for cybersecurity can be much higher?
First of all, we have to separate the work of the cooperation group and the work we're doing in the certification. Well, I don't know where exactly colleague refers to. I know, for example, yes, of course, there is. It's not ENISA; it's the cooperation group work stream on 5G, and this work stream was created after the recommendation from the EU Council. Also, I know that ENISA, together with the relevant stakeholders and the relevant official groups, are working on a 5G scheme for the future certification scheme. For AI, at the level of the cooperation group at the moment, we haven't discussed this issue. For the certification, there are some corridor discussions, so to speak. There is not something official. But yes, artificial intelligence becomes more and more under the radar, in the radar of the Commission and the relevant bodies.
Good, thank you very much. Thank you for that insight. Then there's also a question for Kirsti regarding supply chain. Should we exclusively put cybersecurity requirements on IT and OT contracts, or should we also put cybersecurity requirements to companies supplying critical cyber physical systems?
Okay, thanks for that question. Yes, the question is maybe not as difficult as you might think. Because these cyber physical systems or industrial systems, typically control systems, they a long time ago they were air-gapped and standalone and had the proprietary protocols. but now they are a lot more connected in every way. They have typical off-the-shelf software and so on. So I think that any device or product that has some kind of internet connection or connection should have a level of security requirements to it, and especially with the control systems, the consequences we have seen with the breaches and the incidents in those areas have been very severe, and is definitely an area for improvement.
Good, thank you. Thank you for that clear insight. Then we see also a question: in a multinational company, which country authority do I need to report to a security incident? I can give a quick answer to that one. So you need to report to the competent authority that your asset is located in and where there's impact on impact in the member state it is located in. So if you have a plant in Germany, in Denmark, and in Poland, but the plant of Germany but your headquarters is, for example, in Belgium, then your plant in Germany is attacked, then it is the German competent authority that you need to report to. Together with this question, there is another question that is related to this, and that is for Konstantinos. Let me find. So we've learned that ENISA has more detailed industry-specific guidance on how to implement NIS2 management measures, but the collective information is shared only with certain industry players. And also relates to security incident information. Why all the secrecy, and why is information not shared more widely with the affected industry to learn from each other?
We're talking about the information concerning incidents, I understand, huh? Not security measures. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actually, this has to do with the member states. The member states are the one who are asking not to share information from ENISA. So the information is channeled through the national competent authorities. So this is for the colleague, and we receive many times this question. However, everyone should be aware that the authority, the body who has the real power here is the competent authority. There is the sovereignty issue, here, and the competent authorities will need to have the control of this information. So there is no secrecy, there is no something to hide. It's just a matter of the powers that ENISA has, and of course the member states have.
Thank you. That is, of course, very clear and very understandable with all the different member states and their different ways of working.
Just to add here that perhaps a partial solution for big incidents will be this incident reporting, incident reporting and incident handling provision that exists in the Solidarity Act, which foresees that after a big incident, ENISA will publish a report for this incident. But the Solidarity Act is not a NIS directive, and it's still under negotiation.
Yeah, and we've seen that sharing that information is very valuable to the industry. Last week or 2 weeks ago, there was from the Danish sector cert that gave a great report on an incident there and what the industry did to what the industry did to detect and respond to that incident. So Kirsti, I have a question for you. So are there any guidelines from the national authority in Norway related to what would be in scope, what and what industries would be in scope, and what so what type of industries are in scope?
Yes. Okay. So Norway, we not being a member state, we are a bit behind on implementing the legislation from the EU in this case. Just actually today, the digital security law, digitalsikkerhetsloven, is supposed to be voted over in Parliament. And that is the Norwegian implementation of NIS. So, I have seen that the Norwegian competent authority, NSM, they have or they're predicting that the work with the NIS2 directive will start more or less in parallel of the implementation of the new digital security law. So there isn't any guidelines yet, but I think it will come sooner than you think, I hope.
Yeah, so it is an evolving situation, and you're definitely keeping track of that. Very good. Then I have a question that I can help with. That is, as a power company, they have to be compliant to NIS2. And the question is, does a whole company have to be compliant, or only separate parts of that organization? For instance, does a call center have to be compliant to NIS2? And that's definitely a question about the scope of the organization that we get. What needs to be compliant? Typically, it is that plant and that plant operations from NIS2 perspective that needs to be compliant, and a call center that is a supporting role that is definitely important for your business, but that from a critical infrastructure perspective and the impact that it can have on society, on the member state, that would not be in scope. So typically it is the plant itself, or the so your power plants that you have that meet a certain threshold, that organization and the plant itself, that needs to be then compliant to these cybersecurity measures. Then going to the last question of today. How can you prove compliance? And if a company is certified with ISO 27001, is that enough? Chestry, is that something that you see from a standardization point of view?
If being compliant with ISO 27000 is enough?
Correct.
I think that would depend a lot about the risks that these companies are facing, but in general, there are some additions that need to be made that is not covered by the ISO 27000, and it might vary. So typical is the instant reporting part. But it can also be others that address more the cyber physical or the physical environment, or so it's a good start, but doesn't ensure compliance.
Thank you, that's very clear. And from this, I want to wrap up. Thank you very much for all joining us at this webinar, Unlocking the NIS2 Directive. Thank you all for joining, and I wish you a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.